Hey fam, what's up? Welcome to MIKEroaggress'd Tuesday. I'm so excited. I've been wanting to have this guy on here for the longest time. We've tried to set this up forever. This is amazing. I'm so excited. Welcome, Ben Appel.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's good to be here. I love those clips that you included at the beginning. It looks like I'm like lecturing whoever I'm talking to. So hopefully I won't be like, I promise not to lecture you tonight. But
Please,
yeah.
that's what we're here for, to talk
Yeah.
shit and lecture and rant and all the stuff.
Okay.
How's it going though, dude?
It's going really well. It's going really well. Since I guess you messaged me specifically, I mean, we've communicated in the past, and then were really interested in my book, which is great. And that came out in November. And then recently the Wall Street Journal op-ed, I think, kind of piqued your interest again because it did get some attention. It's I'm gay, but that doesn't make me queer is what they titled it. But it was an op-ed that I wrote last week. And so it's been it's been good. I mean, the response has been really overall really positive, but then there's also like a lot of people that are completely losing their mind about it
Oh
on like
yeah,
Blue Sky and Threads, and especially on Threads. Like Threads is next level, and I don't spend a lot of time on there at all. But yeah, so it's been an interesting week just because the people are really angry about it.
you know you're doing a good job once the hit pieces start.
Mm.
I saw the Advocate is bitching about you.
Yeah, that was a weird. I looked at that last night, and it was a lot of words to say, not a lot of things. I mean, I respect differences of opinion 100 million%. But it was really kind of just a lot of words to say, like, you are a bad person, or you are not you are, this is wrong think, and you're straying from the narrative. Um, this op-ed, I'm gay, but that doesn't make me queer. I write about going to Columbia in my 30s, being like part of the, hashtag resist, super liberal and progressive. This was in 2017. And so I was like really signing up for a lot of classes that were heavy in critical theory. I didn't even really know at the time what that entailed. I didn't know a lot about queer theory. But I was there to learn. And I had worked on the marriage equality campaign in Maryland, just some volunteer work for that. And even for a trans rights legislation campaign in Maryland, way back in like 2013, like just a volunteer for that. It was like anti-discrimination law. So it kind of was the impetus for what led me to go back to school, and become a journalist, become a writer. And so when I'm back, I'm like, ready to just learn and just let it all wash over me. But here I am in my 30s, and I have this life experience, and have these critical thinking skills that I'm just kind of interrogating what I'm hearing. And so much of it is either doesn't make sense, or to me, it just was actually regressive. Like it was actually counterintuitive. Like it didn't have legs. And so I kind of started to dig a little bit deeper and realize that, oh, this is the politicization of knowledge, of history. Like this isn't just like, let's learn. This is like, here's how you should think about these things. And while I was open to looking at different, ways to look at gay rights, at gay history, there was just so much that was just wasn't jiving with me. And specifically the kind of way that queer theory came into it. It was like, I understood that queer isn't just a synonym for gay. For me personally, queer was never like a word that really, for lack of a better word, like triggered me. Like I wasn't, really, it didn't really bother me. I was called faggot, I was called, but and bullied very badly when I was younger, but I was never called queer as a slur. And so it really didn't, bother me, although I completely understood why it bothered other people. I really didn't use it very often. But what I didn't realize is that queer was a politics. It was a position. It was a kind of a political stance. It was not just a synonym for gay, or even like what it kind of used to mean in terms of just embodying a kind of, counterculture, vibe, you know, whether queer was, you know, doing drag or you know, not, you know, non-monogamous relationships.
The
You know,
thing is, though, that's not counterculture now. That's
right.
what's being pushed on us from everywhere. For me, I was never bothered by that word until these people came in and said, you are this, you are queer. And it's so interesting. So your op-ed that you just wrote for the Wall Street Journal, I'm gay, not queer. I just want to bring this up. This is the definition of queer. I feel like it's kind of important to constantly make these people look at what they're actually saying. Worthless, questionable, suspicious, differing from what is normal, insane, obsessed, disparaging, of questionable nature or character, shady, mentally unbalanced or deranged, bad, worthless, or counterfeit. And so what I always find crazy is that these are the people, these LGBT activists are the ones trying to convince people that your sexual orientation makes you worthless, abnormal, insane, questionable. We disagree with that. So yeah, we're the assholes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. And the thing about it is that this kind of idea of queer being all of those, having those negative connotations, like that's the point, because what it's showing us, like what it's suggesting is like, if you adopt yes, I know, like when all these straight people started, like, I don't want to be told what I am. I had the same reaction as you. I didn't care about queer until everybody was like queer. And I'm like, you know, do not ascribe that to me. But
well, and they're the same people who say that you must call everyone by the exact words that they want to be called. To not do so, it is an act of violence. Right. And then the moment that you're like, cool, that gay people say, I don't want to be called queer, or women say, I don't want to be called a birthing person, or everybody says, I don't want to be called cis.
Yeah.
Their heads explode.
Totally. And I think it's just important for people to understand that it's not so, it's like the derogatory kind of meaning of it is the point, because it's saying like your sexual identity is political by nature. It's politicizing your sexual identity. So it's, rather than saying like gay people, trans people, whoever, all walks of life, different, there's viewpoint diversity. We're not a monolith. It's just a facet of ourselves, is the fact that we are this thing. It's like, no, this identity makes you political in this specific way. You are, you know, you have to have the same perspective of what oppression is. You have to take this kind of anti-capitalist, you know, anti-imperialist, anti-Western, essentially, really stance. And by pushing this idea of like embodying queer is in like embodying failure, embodying this derogatory, because it's showing, what we're doing is by showing, like by taking on this queer identity, we're showing that life is impossible for people like us within a capitalist system. Like, so what we do is we opt out of the system. We say, I'm queer, I don't participate. It's not for me because I can't thrive in that. There's no hope for me in it. It's all oppressive. It's all, and so that's what that's stressing. Like there's a professor at Columbia named Jack Halberstam who has a book called The Queer Art of Failure. I think that's what it's called, The Queer Art of Failure. And I write about this in my book, and it's really about that. It's like, let's leave success, let's leave happiness and success or whatever to the Republicans and like the cis het whatever. You know, for us, we can embrace failure. And I mean, it's so nihilistic and detrimental and horrible. And the thing is that I write about in my book, like I come from a really dark background. I was addicted to drugs. I spent time in psych wards. I had complete mental breaks. I shot heroin. I grew up in a fundamentalist religious cult, essentially. And I came out of that and I was rehabilitated. Like I actually really got better and built a life for myself. And I wasn't a victim anymore because I didn't want to be a victim anymore. And I got better. And like, certainly does privilege factor into that? I'm sure, like we were not wealthy by any means, but I guess my mom had health insurance because she was a physical therapist, a single mother. So that means I had health insurance, which meant that I was able to go to the hospital and to the psych ward. So yes, like in that way, I was privileged. So yeah, I was privileged to have
I got to go to the
psychotic break and be able to be hospitalized. But yeah, I mean, I just reached these really low levels. And so what I found is that like, it's almost like there's just no, that's not the message that the supposed LGBTQ plus and queer leaders want to send young people. Not like you can thrive and you can be okay and you're strong and you're resilient. It's like, no, if you are called the wrong, pronoun or dressed the wrong way, it's going to make you want to kill yourself. And it reinforces all of these really, really negative self-images about us. And I do not think that's right. I think that's fundamentally horribly, horribly wrong. And I'm not going to do it. And I'm not here for it. And I'm just not going to do it, and I don't think that makes me a bad person. And I don't think that makes me whatever, all these things that, I mean, and the way that, again, the people that are like exploding about it. And the weird thing is, like, I knew this would happen eventually, but like making up stuff about me, like just like saying like I was like,
I could have told you that one.
I was like, that's really kind of interesting how that happens, because really once you put something out there, it just kind of gets into people's brains and they can just say whatever they want and you can't really prove it's not true. So you're like, okay, well, I guess that's just how people are doing it. I ended up going private on my Instagram account and Threads because I was just like, I'm kind of tired of this. And I just looked today because I was like, oh, I was seeing if people were still posting. And of course they were. And they're like, oh, I love how we bullied him off this site to make him go private. And, like, oh, go to his Goodreads for his book and put negative reviews because we're going to bring down his reviews and stuff like that. It's just this whole concerted effort. And I don't know. I just didn't think that my piece was that evil.
No, well, it's because, the truer words have never been said than misery loves company. And this is the reaction you get when you refuse to sit and be miserable with them, when you refuse to be a victim. Yeah. These people are insane. Also, by the way, everyone, hello to our beautiful chat friends, Armiro, Frishas, Drew, Saw, what's up, beautiful Courtney, Dylan, Chris, everybody, Wayne, thanks for being here. You should go follow this guy on Twitter and obviously buy his book. The links are below and my links are below. Hey, C Striker, and send in your super chats if you feel so inclined to do so. Yeah, well, it's amazing to me that these people, like I said, they try to convince gay people or anyone they consider queer to have this horrible self-image and think these things about themselves, think that they're queer. And then you're the asshole if you choose to have a positive self-image. And I think their politics are very reflective of sort of the culture that they've pushed for so many years. They really do go hand in hand, where I've always felt like the cultural side of being gay, of what they push on you, just this mentality of like, party your life away, do all the drugs, don't have relationships, just hook up with everyone, just drink and drugs and promiscuity. That is the recipe for a miserable and lonely life. And the shit that they're pushing now with queer theory and their political views is also the recipe for a miserable and lonely life. And the most ironic part is that it's so true what you're saying, that these people, they claim they want to opt out of capitalism and all this shit. These bitches are wiping their asses with $100 bills. Mm-hmm. Like you said, the professor, like, let's see what his net worth is, or all these LGBT groups, the HRC and GLAAD, they are all raking in money by convincing everyone else, oh, capitalism is evil and everyone's homophobic, you're a victim, you're oppressed.
1,000,000%. I mean, I would say I couldn't have said it better. It's exactly like that. I mean, and I write about that in my book too, like interning at GLAAD in 2017 for my first summer at Columbia. And I write all about that, like just like what I witnessed there and the environment that I saw. And again, I was so excited to join this organization because I revered it at the time. And I was working on this fledgling initiative called the Trump Accountability Project, because it was like pretty much responding to everything.
That.
Yeah. And so I was their news and rapid response intern. So I would like monitor for stuff that was coming out of the White House regarding, LGBT issues. And I was so excited to be a part of it all. And then I kind of just realized that there was no room for dialogue. Like, it was so much about if someone had misspoken it was like boycott, silence them, condemn them, like pretty much just bring it all down on them. And I was like, I do not see that. From part of my background is I was a hairstylist for a long time in the Baltimore, DC area. That was like what I got into. And then but before going back to school to Columbia,
You probably heard all their
developed this
secrets
really
there.
great, with that.
You probably heard all their secrets being a hairdresser.
Well,
in
and so
DC.
what it was it was in like a kind of a purple state. I was in Maryland. I was in a really diverse area, and there was a lot of conservatives. There were a lot of liberals. It was a very, very diverse politically, not just racially, but politically area. And so I was, for 15 years, I was forming really close relationships with people from all walks of life. And it wasn't always comfortable. Like there were people that were like, I had clients that were like pastoral counselors, you know, that I like knew were like trying to, you know, like ex-gay me in like a roundabout way, but I ended up forming these personal relationships with it. And this person that I'm thinking of individually, like brought me a wedding gift and spoke about my marriage. Like it, and you know, who's to say? I can't say that she completely changed her opinion, but forming these close relationships and having dialogue and just being open to different people and to different ideas, and not just shutting down and being like, screw you, you're a bad person, which is just so counterintuitive. I just found that was so much more effective in any kind of, I don't know whether it was, you can call it activism, but really just like living in a pluralistic society and living peacefully and coexisting peacefully with other people and learning from other people. And so I just found that wasn't really the tack that GLAAD seemed to be taking anymore. And recently I was on a podcast, Strange Bedfellows, like when LGB met T, which was produced by Andy Mills, and Ben Kowaler is the lead reporter for it. Everybody should listen to it. It's really good. It's a 3-part series. And they did interview me for this, and they interview a lot of other people as well. Andy Mills is the producer who did the witch trials of J.K. Rowling a few years ago, which was a great show. So it's a really good, and it gets into the kind of the tension within this, you know, supposed coalition, and they go really deep into it, and it's great. And you know, the people have reached out to me since then, and you know, working in these organizations, and been like, thank you for saying that. I noticed these same things going on. I felt so alone because I was like, I'm scared of those, like, to be honest, I'm scared of those organizations. Like they're very
an organization
powerful.
Called GLAAD, they are the most miserable people on the face of the earth.
Yes. And you know, it's like they're just it's dark, and I don't, and they just completely just want to annihilate you if you don't agree with, and to me, have been on the kind of gender affirming care beat for a long time, in the sense that when I first learned about this, I was like, that's the most insane thing I've ever heard in my entire life. And like, you're giving puberty blockers to little girly boys. Like, what the hell are you? This is the most regressive, backwards, asinine bullshit I've ever heard in my life. And that was, you know, back 2017, 2018 is when I started really kind of digging into this and becoming familiar. And initially I kind of just stayed quiet because I was like, okay, clearly like someone knows better than me, I guess, but I still think that that's insane. But very quickly I started doing the research and just really digging into it. And I was like, this is horrible, and people are really being harmed. And this is fundamentally anti-gay. It's fundamentally anti-gender nonconformity, not just anti-gay,
Yes.
but this is, you know, it's like, oh, you know, let's medically engineer, you know, young gay kids or gay kids who would otherwise likely be gay into like straight adults. You know, let's tell kids that, yeah, you're great just as you are, although you have to change everything about yourself, including chemically castrating yourself to exist peacefully in society. You know, we have to make you conform to. It's so bananas. It's so bonkers to me. And so, you know, I have spoken out about that and gotten in a lot of deep crap for it. And what angers me and I really struggle with is that I know for a fact, actually, that a lot of people within GLAAD specifically and within those organizations do not believe in whether it's medicalizing young people or males and women's sports. and they go along, they keep their mouth shut and they go along with it anyway.
Well, and I
It's
feel
egregious.
like there should be nobody who knows better on this topic than gay people, because we are the people who would have been targeted with this shit if we were growing up nowadays. I would say when I was growing up, I just wanted to be David Bowie. Today, I would be told you're some sort of trans, you're queer. I'd be lucky to get out of high school with my balls still attached.
Yeah. And look, it's so complex, because what confuses people is they're like, a lot of these people don't seem gay though, that are identifying as trans. And it's really true. It's actually true, is that I would even guess like the majority of young people that are identifying as trans are not gay. But what this protocol, what this practice began as, is literally trans and gay. I mean, you know, if you look at the data, if you look at the Dutch protocol and like where this comes from, you know, 60, all but one of the kids, I'm sorry, only one of the 70 identified as heterosexual out of 70 adolescents that were in that original cohort that they took that data from and brought to the US in 2007 to start medicalizing kids here. You know, it's like, so when I started learning about all of this, because that was my initial thought, I was like, I was a girly kid, Mike. Like, I was like, are you a boy or a girl? That kind of thing. Like, I was just, you know, and so I think to myself, like, if I knew that that was an option to decide, and I had a really religious background, I had such guilt about being gay and I was so terrified of it. So if like a really kind, you know, guidance counselor and teacher like came to me and they were like, you know, maybe you are a girl, and like if it meant that I would have permission to like pink and have my sticker collections and dance and do all these things, you know, because that's kind of what it would be giving me permission to do if I just adopted she her pronouns and kind of took this route, then, and if I would have seen my same-sex attraction as like a medical defect and not as like some kind of spiritual defect or religious defect, I would have been like, yeah, you know, that would have made a lot of sense to me, especially if I'm being like love bombed and, you know, oh, you're brave and this, and there's just so much to it, and it's really complicated. But again, what complicates it now is that there are a lot of adolescents and young people who are identifying as trans for a lot of different reasons, and they're coming about it in a lot of different ways. There's many routes to trans identity. But what I fear is that, like, you know, once there's all this course correction and like, okay, they stop medicalizing, you know, young, you know, borderline girls or autistic boy or whatever, that they're just going to go back to like, oh, now we'll just, you know, the true trans, which is essentially just like the little proto gay boys and butch lesbians that would, you know, we could just let be, just make more space for gender nonconformity. There's always going to be a minority of inherently, like naturally gender nonconforming people. We're a small minority, but there's always going to be. And like, I'm not so gender nonconforming now. I mean, I am, but I'm not, because I defeminize myself purposefully. Now, part of it was
you grow up.
Yes, I grew up, but I also, as a coping mechanism and to survive, like to protect myself, I was constantly self-scanning for signs of, like, when I went to this new school and public school and we left this religious community and the kids were like, are you a boy or a girl? You're a faggot, you're gay. And it fucking terrified me. And I was like, I tuned into what I had to change about myself to make myself acceptable. So I cut all the highlights out of my hair. I walked differently. I wore different clothes. I threw out my old CDs, like Mariah Carey CDs. I like listened to like Nirvana. I deepened my voice purposefully. Like I was just and I'm like, I didn't, when I got into becoming like, you know, growing up and being like, oh, I want to get into activism. Really, I was like, I just want to make it so there's more space in this world for gender nonconforming kids to grow up where they don't feel like they have to change everything about themselves. Like they're kind of protected from bullying, and it's not like they're like, oh, boys, you should all be like this. You should all be gay. Like no, like, and it's okay to tell kids like, yes, you're different. Yes, you're atypical. Yes, you're even abnormal. You're not the norm, and that's okay. That's perfectly okay. And it might seem like right now you are you're the only one, but you are not. There are other people out there like you, and you will meet them. But yes, it's a little bit more difficult because you are different in this way, and there's nothing wrong with that. And so just making more space for gender nonconformity. And so when I started seeing how they were medicalizing kids, I was like, oh, that was not what I was thinking at all. And I know that that's not what a lot of gays and lesbians were thinking.
Well, and you would have been somebody who would be targeted with this. I mean, what they call nonconformity is nothing but conformity. It's just this very sort of rigid idea from 50 years ago that they believe the exact same shit, that if a girl is a tomboy, that's not a real girl. If a boy likes dolls or the color pink, you're not a real boy. That wasn't that just small-mindedness from like 50 years ago?
Yes.
I love this. Ramiro says, shout out to masculine men that were queens back in the day as kids.
Right?
They push the trans on boys who like the color pink. It's just a color. Yeah. Hey, Matt. Matt says, hey, Ben, terrific book. Thanks for having him on, Mike. Like I said, the link to it is below. You got it. It is a must read. But yeah, and it's amazing to me that these things aren't coming from people who openly admit that they are against gay people or whoever. It's coming from, the call is coming from inside the house. It's from the people that we're being told is our community.
Right. Yeah.
Which just makes it even more insidious.
It does. And it's so they've completely abdicated their responsibility to advocate for gay and lesbian people and for gay and lesbian young people, or for it's really maddening. And they've completely lost the plot, and they have so much power and so much influence. And so it feels, and the politicization of this issue is maddening, because I'm a very politically homeless person. Like I guess would be considered conservative today in some regards, but I'm really pretty centrist. But I'm more just curious about different ideas, and I'm always learning. And but the politicization of it is like, if you go against the grain, you're somehow like a far right, Andrew Tate lover kind of whatever. It's really everybody gets hurt in that way. It doesn't help anyone. And so to see that response, and to see other, like, especially other gay people react in that, I mean, like, even on like threads, there's people that are like, I don't know, just really awful, really, really horrible. And then calling me like a traitor to my own whatever. I don't even think it's a we're not a community. Like, we're just a population. Like, it's just an aspect.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. Go.
Well, I was going to say that I could totally say though I'm a traitor. So here's the thing. I never joined a group called LGBT. So if these people believe that gay people are born that way, does that mean that there is a blood oath signed at birth that puts you in this group? Because there's no commonality. There's absolutely nothing that you and I know about being trans any more than a straight person does. There's no commonality. So how exactly, my question to them is always, how do I avoid being a traitor? Because I wouldn't want to be a traitor, but I never joined this group. So do you people just think that you are just from birth entitled to the minds, bodies, loyalty, and entire personhood of every gay person on this earth? Because I never joined a group called LGBT.
Yeah, and they do, actually. They do, mm-hmm. And they wouldn't really put it that way, but it's more like it is such an ingrained belief system that it's really like they are unable to see through the fog of, you are a bad person. Like, I can't even fathom how you could think this way, because you are fundamentally evil. It's like it's trying to argue with biblical literalists. And look, I'm not to say anything against Christians. I respect Christians 1,000,000%. Jesus is awesome, all that stuff. But like, it's like arguing about, evolution with a biblical literalist who believes, like, fundamentally that Genesis tells the true story of the origin of the earth in the Bible. And it's like, there's no arguing with that, because it is such a fully ingrained belief system. And it's part of what they believe that makes them, they feel like that's what makes them good. So part of their belief system is to say, like, trans women are absolutely with women. They're female. They're no, or yes, the kids know who they are, and like if they're trans, and that is so, like, that's their belief system. And so to argue with that and to go against that, that's why my book, like Cis White Gay, The Making of a Gender Heretic, because it's a heresy. The things that I say and talk about, it is really a heresy. And it is like, we will destroy you if you say these things.
It's like talking to a Scientologist.
Yeah, exactly.
Vlad is also waiting for Xenu to come back.
Yes, exactly.
It really is. If you look up the warning signs of a cult, it exhibits every single one. You can't ask questions, no room for wrong think. The group is always right. They hate dissidents or people who question them or leave the group. It really is a cult.
That's why that was really my kind of, I guess, awakening at Columbia, was seeing the parallels between the environment that I was in at Columbia on campus and my childhood growing up in fundamentalist religion, a covenant community, it was called, the Lamb of God. And what I was seeing was that all of this purity policing going on. And I was like, I know this game. Like, this is, everybody in that community was constantly policing each other for wrong think, for being less, like, the women leaders were actually called handmaids in this community. Like, they were called handmaids. And so they would, it would be like, oh, that's a lovely dress. Oh yeah, well, it was only $3 at Salvation Army. Oh, well, I got mine for $1.50 at Salvation Army. Oh, well, I made my dress, so it didn't cost me. It was like that.
And that was sort of the pecking order of virtue.
Yes, and it was like,
it's exactly what happens here.
It was like, confess your sins to us, and we are going to kind of gossip about you and just pass down these judgments. That's what it was. It was fundamentally this culture of purity policing and shame, and people feeling like they could never fully, truly add up, or being afraid to err, or being afraid to dissent in any possible way. And so it led to so many people eventually leaving and having to get really intense help from the Cult Awareness Network, in a lot of sense, to really, detox from this and get better. And so I was like, I know this world. And it was exactly what I was seeing, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020 at Columbia, in academia, working at GLAD, but also on campus, where I was in these humanities classrooms, and I was seeing all of these things take place. And my response to it was like, I was so afraid to say the wrong thing. Like, I was so afraid to misspeak. And I was constantly like, it was just all of these impulses, these OCD impulses, to constantly feel guilty and ashamed and self-scan for signs of like sinfulness or transgression that I did when I was younger. It all came flooding back in that atmosphere. And I was like, this is so unhealthy. And not only are the ideas regressive, like I spoke about, whether we're talking about sex and gender, or we're talking about race, which, there was just so much regressiveness in this supposed anti-racism that they were putting forth. And so, it was besides the ideas being very counterintuitive and shady and wrong, and the culture, there was like, no one was winning in it. People were really, really suffering. Like, they're really not doing well.
and you see the outcome of it now with people who are so seeped in the alphabet cult. Like, do these people look happy? Do they look healthy? Do they look well adjusted?
Yeah.
I want to get into your background though, because one thing everyone knows about me, I love cults. I am obsessed with cults. So I want to get into it. So this is something you were raised in? Were you born into it?
Yeah, I was born into it. So it was called the Lamb of God community, and it's in the Baltimore. It was in the Baltimore area, and it was part of the kind of, it was actually Catholic in nature. It was the Catholic charismatic renewal movement that began in like the 60s. So it was like speaking in tongues and like laying hands to heal on each other, to heal people, and prophecy. So like, God's telling me that that kind of thing. And it was, so it grew out of that. A lot of the people that kind of were attracted to that at the beginning were kind of like ex-hippies that were coming out of like the drug haze of like the 60s, and they were just kind of, and so they kind of got high on Jesus after that. But then there were a lot of folks that it just became really fundamentalist in nature because it hooked up with what's called the Covenant Community Network. And these Covenant communities are communities of people where there are leaders at the top. And in our leadership, most of them are called handmaids, or the women that are the leaders. And then the men are called coordinators. And there were 5 male coordinators at the top of the community that I grew up in. My father was one of them. And so the men at the top were just really dictate. Everybody would move to the same area. They all lived in the same area. A lot of them lived with each other. Like single people lived with married couples until they found someone else in the community to marry. And it wasn't like we lived on a commune. We all just lived in the same neighborhood. So it was like every second or third house could be like a Lamb of God member. So if someone like moved into the area, they wouldn't really realize that they were moving like into like a cult neighborhood, and then suddenly they would be like, wow, this is kind of, and so, everybody kind of just settled in this same kind of however many square mile area. All the kids went to the same school. It was a tiny school, and there were prayer meetings every week, and then prayer meetings at different people's houses. And so it was essentially like the men were the husband masters and the women were the handmaids. And the women just really had to kind of obey everything that the men said. The men, this is how it goes. And there were, the way that it got really, really twisted was, they would have these prayer meetings where there were leaders within the community beneath the head coordinators and the head handmaids. And they would have people in their houses and kind of form these prayer groups. And so much of it was about like confessing your sins, like, oh, I'm, lusting after this person that's not my wife, or, oh, I am doubting this or doubting that. And then like those leaders would kind of bring it to the handmaids and the coordinators. And then they would kind of like, so it's like the people at the top knew what was going on inside the minds of everyone beneath them. And they like knew how to judge them and kind of dole out, whether it was, control, coerciveness, punishment, whatever it was, to keep people in line. And it was just very much like the outside world, secularism, humanism, homosexuality, feminism, like evil, 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 inside this bubble, like where we are, like we're this bulwark, we're forming this bulwark against all of those evil things, and kind of essentially preparing for like the second coming, whenever that may be. But really just, it just really this fundamentalist nature, returning to kind of a biblical way of life in a lot of respects.
Something I've noticed that's interesting is every single cult has their own distinct jargon and nomenclature to it. Like Scientology has suppressive person, thetans, auditing. Yours is coordinators and handmaidens, or the alphabet cult, cis, all these terms that they come up with, queer. And it really is, I feel like, deliberate. It's very intentional. It's sort of a compliance test that if you're using their jargon, it's a way of signaling that you're part of the group. 100%. And if you refuse to, that's why everyone has to put their pronouns in their bio. It's a compliance test. And if you won't do it, it's showing that there's some independent thought happening there. We can't have that.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what it went after we left the community. When I was 12 when we left. And
your parents also left?
We all left at the same time. So,
oh, wow. So what was that? Sorry, not to interrupt, but what was it that was sort of the impetus of that?
Yeah, so it started to fall apart. Now, when I was a kid, I have 2 sisters and a brother, and we all came up in that school and in this community. And I was kind of unaware of like how things were deteriorating. Like I write about this in my book, but like by the 6th grade, there were only 4 kids in my grade, including me. And I didn't realize, I was just like, oh, I guess just people moved away. But it was really like families left this community purposefully because they were like, this is crazy. And it destroyed a lot of marriages. And what was going on was, I didn't know this at the time, but a lot of ex-members had written letters to the Catholic Archdiocese and saying this is a cult. These people are harming, their people are being harmed. You need to investigate this. So the Archdiocese in Maryland was investigating this community, and I had no idea. So there was a lot of there were tithes that people had to pay. It was like 10% of your income that had to go to the leadership, and then whatever.
They always want your money.
Always money. So it was like, so there was a lot of like, what's this money? Where is this money going? There was a big purchase made in the early years of the community where they purchased a huge estate north of Baltimore that they called the Farm, and where we had like festivals, like fall festivals where we would like dance around a maypole and like all this stuff, right? And so
like midsummer.
So when they ended up, yeah, exactly. So then when they ended up selling the farm and making all this money, everybody was like, where is the money go? Because they sold it for, I think it was like 1.9 million, or I can't even remember, but it was a very large number. There was just a lot of unhappiness with ex-members, and there was just a lot going on. And in 94, 95, I believe it was 94, Baltimore Magazine wrote an expose on the community called The Cult Next Door. And I write about this in my book as well. And that was when things really started to fall apart. Now, why we essentially left was my mom was like, she was the one that wanted to join the community back in 76 when my dad and her joined it. But it was like, they were engaged to be married at the time. They were getting ready to be married. They didn't have kids. And my mom, it was like very much like everybody was like grace and love and Jesus loves you and everyone's accepted. And my mom was really pulled into that. She was like, she grew up kind of, going to Catholic school, very rigid, like nuns would smack you on the hand with rulers. And she had a lot of religious guilt growing up. And so when she was really attracted to this, because it seemed like everybody was just about grace and mercy and acceptance, and she really liked that at the beginning. And then, but then within a few years, it got linked up with this Covenant Community Network, and the leadership adopted all of these authoritarian, this authoritarian approach. And so initially, for a number of years, my mom went along with it because she was like, these are my people, this is my community. My dad rose up in the leadership, but they were having a lot of marital issues. My dad was really neglectful towards her. She was super, super unhappy. And she was like, she was like, I didn't want to join like a patriarchal cult. Like that wasn't what this isn't what I wanted to do. And so again, she tried to kind of survive in that as long as she could, but finally she was like, I don't want to do this anymore. So she was really the one that kind of, what I learned later interviewing the former head handmaid of the community, other leadership in the community and different people in the community, was that when folks started dissenting, when they started voicing their unhappiness with the way that things were going, and my mom was one of those people. She was having a lot of problems in her marriage with my dad, and she wanted to get counseling, but you weren't allowed to go to therapists outside of the community because it was like, what kind of, new agey shit will they tell you? And like, that'll go against our teaching. So but what I learned is that when you started to kind of dissent, the leadership would essentially just push you out. They were like, this person's a doubter. They would call them a doubter. And they were like, this person's a doubter. This is that we need. So one day my dad gets a phone call. They're like, we don't have it in the budget to employ you anymore, because he was not just a coordinator, but he was the school superintendent. He taught geography at the school. So they were like, we don't have it in the budget to support you anymore. So it was really just like kind of nudge people out of the community because they're trouble. And so my parents left, and they told us, my siblings and me, like, oh, we're going to move further out towards and more the county because, our neighborhood's becoming unsafe, and you'll go to, But it was really like my mom really just wanted to get out of there. And so within the year after we left, she ended up divorcing my father. Oh, wow. And things really fell apart in our home and got really, really bad. But is
this similar to sort of Scientology, where they disconnect from you and they really shun anyone who leaves?
Yeah.
So you sort of lose everything you've ever known, especially for you being born in it. You sort of lose everything you ever knew.
That's exactly right. And that was the hardest part about it, was because my best friends, like my best friend who I was a baby, like we were babies together, we were baptized on the same day. Like I had maybe one or two more play dates after that. And then it was like nothing. And so I didn't have these religious mentors, these teachers. Like every day we were like in prayer and worship. And it was such a, like, I felt so safe and connected as long as I was in that. And so then we were just literally ripped out of it and put into an entirely new world. And it actually wasn't very far away. It was like a 25-minute drive, but it was like a world away. We went to public school, and it was just a completely different world. And again, like I didn't know how gender non-conforming I was, because within the community, it was like, obviously it was like Sodom and Gomorrah, AIDS is God's punishment of gay people, but there wasn't really so much policing of gender nonconformity, because it was like, if you're a good Christian and you're on fire for the Lord and you're like, that's all that matters. So it was
just like Iran. You can be trans,
so it was like there were flamers, and like it was like, what did that mean? Like I was a little flamer. I had like a really beautiful voice, so I was just like, I starred as Jesus in the school pageant. You know, like I sang, and I did like, that was like, I was whatever.
That's something that needs to go on your resume. I was Jesus in the cult's pageant.
I was Jesus in the cult. I gave a very, very convincing performance as Jesus. But you know, so yeah, so but then being in the real world and going into public school where there's like 250 kids in my grade, and there is this hierarchy. There's, you know, there's the in crowd and there's the jock. Right away, people were like, you're and actually it had started the summer we left, the summer before my first year in public school. At the local public pool that I belonged to, kids started calling me gay, and I was like, I didn't really know I was gay yet. I just knew but they were kind of attaching it to the way that I behaved. So like the way I would brush my hair behind my ear, and the way I stood, and like my Valley Girl kind of, you know, way of talking, and so it really, really terrified me. So as the summer progressed, it got worse and worse. And then I was like, oh my God. Then suddenly we're ripped out of this community and we're put into this new thing. And then I'm like, this public school, I'm like, everybody's going to know, like they're going to see what everybody, and sure enough, 1,000,000% right away, they were like, you know, it was really, really brutal. And so it was not fun. And you know, I talked about earlier, I did get heavily into drugs and alcohol, and I started drinking when I was 12, alone.
Oh, wow.
Because I just didn't know how to deal with and I developed really severe OCD in the form of scrupulosity, which is like, I didn't like wash my hands. Like I prayed constantly. Like I was constantly repenting and kneeling before, because I was like convinced that all of this was happening because of me. I was a bad person. So like, if I pray enough and repent enough, like God will forgive me and kind of see, you know, just protect me from all of this. And it was a really, really dark time. And so I had no capability of dealing with that. So I ended up, you know, drinking and then got into drugs in high school, and it went really downhill from there.
How long did that last?
It lasted until I got really heavy into drugs. When I discovered pot when I was 16, pot was like my saving grace. It was like, because I could still function on it. Like I could still go to work. Like I had a job as a busboy at a restaurant, and I was still like, grades were important to me. Like I still wanted to excel, and like I could do my homework. I could do these things, but it just took the edge off. It helped me to sleep at night. The nights were the hardest, and it kind of just calmed my thoughts a little bit. And it even helped me kind of deal with what I knew was I was gay at that time. It helped me to it was almost like a buffer between the reality of me being gay and all. Like I could kind of intellectualize it and even talk about it with like my very closest girlfriends. And like, it just anesthetized me. It was like, it was something that just kind of protected me from really the full gravity of that situation of being a gay person. And so, but I became one, I got into heavier drugs, you know, whether it was ecstasy, but then eventually opiates, like I did oxys and stuff like that. And downers were like my thing. And then I was smoking pot every day, and I actually became psychotic. So
The pot?
yeah. So
Oh, it does that?
yeah, so I didn't know this. Actually, Alex Berenson wrote a book about this called Tell Your Children, like the link between marijuana and psychosis or whatever, like violence, marijuana, da da da. And, you know, I did not know that. I knew that I had severe, you know, mental health issues. I had OCD, anxiety, depression. So I don't know if it was like pot that really made me go crazy, or perhaps it was I went on like a total cocaine binge in New Orleans. Like I went down to New Orleans for Mardi Gras when I was 19, and I like did so much coke, and I wasn't really an upper person, but like 2 weeks later I was completely manic and psychotic. Like I was delusional, like I lost my mind, and I was like, you know, I was just, and this is a thing, like people experience cocaine induced psychosis, but they also experience, especially young people who use pot every day, that it can actually, I was actually diagnosed with schizophrenia when I was 19 after the psychotic break, because that's the kind of typical age that this starts to manifest, as this starts to present itself. So here I am having these like hallucinations, hearing things, seeing things, and they knew that I was using drugs, but they were like, oh, we think you're schizophrenic. So they pumped me with all these antipsychotics. Now I wasn't schizophrenic, thankfully. And what the difference was is that I needed to put down the drugs and alcohol. Like once I got sober in my early 20s. So after I got out of the psych ward and I kind of started to kind of get myself together a little bit, I started using again. Then I got into heroin, and then I was back in the psych ward and all this. It was just really, really bad. But then finally I went into a 12-step program and ended up getting sober. So I got sober when I was 23. So I've been sober for 20 years now.
Oh my God, dude, that's amazing. Good for you.
Thanks.
What was the thing that put you in the psych ward initially? Was it
it was the psychotic break? So it was the psychotic break. So it was, I'll tell you, I got home from Mardi Gras and I was really starting, like, again, I was using every day and I had done a lot of cocaine there, but of course I was still smoking pot. And it was like my grip on reality had just started to like, it's a weird, the kind of descent into psychosis, I guess, can be quick for some people, but it also can be kind of like gradual. So it's like you start to you're not starting to not really make sense. You're creating this kind of story in your head, like the world is ending and you're responsible for saving it, or, oh, you can hear dead people. You can see, you know, just these different things. Like you start to, and then suddenly like, people on the radio are kind of talking to you specifically. There's a lot of grandiosity involved. And it got more and more severe, where I was like really just bananas. Like I was like not making sense. And on the day, it was my dad's mom, my grandmother, had passed away, and we were driving to her funeral. And my brother, I was driving in one car with my younger brother, who was like, I don't know, 13 at the time, or 14, 15, probably 15. And I was, my mom and my sisters were in the car in front of us. And I know my dad was going to be there, but he was going to meet us there. So anyway, we're driving north from Maryland to New Jersey. And whatever it was, the voices on the radio or whatever told me to split off from them and leave leave my brother all alone at a gas station, just because he was like, we're lost. Where are they? Like, how did you lose them? And I was like, oh, I don't know. And he went to go call them, because I didn't have a cell phone at the time, at the gas station. And I just sped off without him. I left him there by himself, because that's what God or whatever it was telling me to do. And I just like did a joyride across Maryland and Pennsylvania. And then hours later, however many hours later, and I really messed up my car because I hit this divider thing at one point, and I ended up at a school in the middle of nowhere, and I went there and I was like, God sent me here. And they were like, oh, that's nice. Like, you know, and they were like, why don't you just wait here? And they called
Imagine if they had to affirm that.
Yeah,
affirm your
exactly.
identity.
And the police came and they took me in, and they were like, this kid is clearly unwell. and they brought me into the police station and handcuffed me to the wall for a number. And then my mom came and got me. And that night they didn't know it. They were like, he's lost his mind. And I was not making sense. And so they took me to the psych ward. And so I was locked up in a psych ward for a week. And then I got out after a week, but I was very, very not well. And I went home and I was dreadfully suicidal. And after about a week at home, I was desperate to kill myself. And so instead of doing that, thankfully, I woke my mom up and I told her, I said, Mom, I'm going to kill myself. I need to go back to the hospital. And she drove me back to the hospital, and I went back and I started to get just a little bit better that second week. One is, I think they put me on the right meds. Like, they put me on anti-anxiety, because I was having like panic attack after panic attack after panic attack after panic attack. And I think they put me on anti-anxiety medicine, and it made me feel sane for the first time in, like, I just felt like I could sit in my skin. Very quickly, it got worse again. But after I got out of I was introduced to a 12-step program, my second stay in the psych ward. And so after I got out of that, I started going to a 12-step program, and I tried to stick with it. But the talk about God and about prayer and all these, I was so not capable of going. I wanted to, but I really couldn't. I could not. I wasn't ready to be sober. And so I ended up going back out, and then I ended up reaching a point of desperation, and going back into the rooms and getting sober.
Are there any resources that exist for people adjusting to reality after being in cults? Because that's got to be such a mindfuck. You grow up knowing nothing but this constricted little environment of the cult, and then being thrown into the real world.
Yeah, and so there is what it was for me, and I'm glad you asked that, because what I did a lot of work on, a lot of therapy, a lot of intensive stuff, getting sober at 23 and all the years after that, going to therapy, getting better slowly but surely. But I'll tell you, going to Columbia and being in this hyper progressive space and seeing the cult like atmosphere of this, right? And what it triggered in me, these reactions in me, I ended up doing a full year of trauma therapy while I was at Columbia. So I did EMDR. And that, have you heard of EMDR?
No, what is that?
It stands for eye movement desensitization, EMDR. Someone in the chat might know, because it's a mode of therapy that involves like eye movement. For me, it was like tapping, but it was actually what I'm so grateful for, that experience at Columbia and that kind of reckoning that I had there, because it allowed me to unroot all that was still there. Like, when you're programmed from a young age to believe specific things and to believe a specific, have a specific perspective, it's programmed. There's no it's so hard to overwrite. Like, you can't. So I would go for years. I would go to therapy. So here I am, 33, 34, 35, and I'm going to therapy, and I'm talking about these same things. And I was embarrassed. I was like, I can't believe I'm still talking about this. So finally, when I went to this EMDR specialist, who a friend of mine who's a social worker had been recommending this mode of therapy to me, when I met her when I was like 21, she was like, you need to go to EMDR. And I finally, when I was at Columbia, I was like 35, 36. And I finally went because I was having a really hard time and I was starting to have panic attacks and it was just ugly. And this therapist, and I was like, I can't believe I'm still talking about these things, like from the community that I grew up in and like all these. And she was like, this is what kind of, and not to be like dramatic, because everybody, talks about how their trauma, like everybody has trauma these days, but
yours is real though.
well, like, yeah. I mean, I did have some trauma stuff. And so she said, part of experiencing trauma is that there's a part of you that's stuck. And because I was like, I don't understand why sometimes I'll be walking around down the street and I'll actually feel like I'm 12, like I'm 13. Like I actually picture myself as like I feel like she was like, because there's this part of you that is stuck And so what EMDR does, because you can do talk therapy and talk about your trauma back and forth, and that was the frustrating thing, is like, I knew how to articulate it. I knew why I was behaving the way I was. I knew why I had these fears and these irrational fears and this guilt and the shame and all of these things and these behaviors, but I couldn't dislodge it. I couldn't like get rid of it. And so she was like, that's what it is. You can talk about this until the cows come home, but you need to do there's this form of EMDR specifically. And for me, it was tapping. And so this might sound so strange, but it actually has a really, really, really high success rate where people who do this form of trauma therapy, it really does work for them. And for me, so
reprocessing.
Yes, deprocessing, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. Thank you, Matt. Reprocessing. So it is really, yes, thank you, Romero. So reprocessing. And so you're reprocessing these old traumas. And so for some people, it's like eye movement stuff. So when you're talking about these things, the therapist will do this thing where they're like, okay, as you're follow my fingers. And so they're like, okay, stay in that. It's very strange. I'm not an expert at all, but for me specifically, it was tappers. So there were these things that were like about the size of eggs or maybe a little bit smaller, and they were attached to wires. And I would hold them in my palms. And so I would sit across from the therapist in her office, and she had a little switchboard. So occasionally, and I don't know why she would give them to me at specific times, but we would be talking about something and she'd be like, let's do a little bit of tapping with this. So I would be like, okay. So she would hand me these tappers and I would hold them in my hand, and they would vibrate, alternating vibrate. So it would feel like a tap in my hand, like tap, 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 but just like a vibrate. And I would just sit there, and it was very relaxing. It was very peaceful in her office. She was a great therapist. And somehow what this does is it stimulates a part of your brain where typically, this is in layman's terms, this is how I understand it. There's a part of your brain that kind of shuts down when you're talking about these things. Well, it kind of keeps that open so that you're actually really able to kind of reprocess these, whether they're traumatic memories or traumatic belief, like whatever it is that this is, you're allowed to reprocess it. So it's almost like, for me specifically, like the picture broadened a little bit. So I was able to just get more context and kind of rethink and understand. And it was invaluable. And that was a huge part of helping me. And I don't think I would have been able to write my book, if I had not done that. I don't think I would have been able to finish at Columbia and do so well there. I don't think I would have been able to do what I'm doing and to be where I am if I hadn't really done that.
Matt says this is not in the book, which is why podcast interviews are so great. I'm glad we can maybe add something positive to the podcast landscape, because I was just talking with my friend on a recent episode that we were like, maybe podcasts were a mistake. I feel like podcasts have sort of gone downhill nowadays. So when you were in, is this, by the way, the same cult that was like murdering people?
What, as a kid?
Well, no, not you, but is this not you? But
no, but I mean that I belonged to as a kid?
Yeah.
No, there was no murdering going on. There was sexual abuse, but there was no murdering going on.
I feel like there always is in these
right,
cults.
I know. Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, like I said, I mean, that's got to be the biggest mindfuck, to go from that to then being thrust into reality, going from one extreme to the other.
I wonder if the person is talking about, there was a show on, maybe they're not. Whoever asked that, did someone ask that question?
Oh no, I was just asking.
Oh, because there's actually a really good documentary on Netflix called oh my gosh, I'll look it up. It's called like The Keepers. Did you ever see The Keepers?
Oh yeah, weren't those nuns?
Yes. And so there was like a murder, but it was like a repressed memory. So it was like, did it really happen? Did it not happen? There was sexual abuse. It was all these things. It was a very good series. That is actually, now that wasn't the cult that I grew up in, but that was actually the neighborhood that I grew up in.
God.
So the priest that they reference is the priest from, so I belonged to this community. There were prayer meetings, there was leadership, but we still went to church on top of that. So we still went to Catholic church, but we were more involved in this community. And the church that those people went to was the church that we belonged to as well.
Oh, there was one called Daughters of the Cult. I thought that's the one I was thinking of.
Oh, no. But yeah, I mean, covenant communities, there was like Word of God, Lamb of God. There's People of Praise. Like, actually, Amy Coney Barrett, the Supreme Court Justice, is a member of or was a member of People of Praise.
What?
So the
I feel like once people start talking in tongues, it's never good.
it's next level.
Remember, did you ever see Benny Hinn growing up?
No. What is that?
Oh my god, he was this little Indian guy. He would come on TV at he had like his 2-hour infomercial at like 2 a.m, and he was this little Indian guy who would have a stadium of people speaking in tongues. They get out of the wheelchairs, I can walk now, and they'd start speaking in tongues. When I was a kid, my mom and I used to prank call him.
Nice. I love that. Yeah. Well, I mean, it really is something. Like, it's really bonkers when you see that. And that was like, I was so normal to me. That was like what I grew up in. Like, all of the kids, like all in my classmates, like we would get so fevered in prayer, and I do write about this in my book. Like, we would get so fevered, like we would all be crying, and we would all be speaking in tongues, or at least trying to speak in tongues, like our parents. It was really, really nuts.
Oh, I watched this one. They were Indians too, these culty Indians, and they built their own town.
Is that Wild Wild Country? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
There are a lot of Indian cults.
Interesting.
So was it sort of when you got to Columbia that you started, what was sort of the beginning of you seeing the cultishness?
Yeah, I think
on the flip side.
Well, so initially it wasn't actually LGBTQ stuff off the bat. Initially it was more to do with the way that people were talking about race, and people were talking about, and I write about this in my book a lot too, and I did not expect it to be like about this, but about Islam and Muslims. So
that was a big one for me too.
At the time, there was, Trump came into office. My first week at Columbia, Trump was inaugurated for his first term. So, immediately he comes out with the Muslim ban, and protesting is such a huge thing on campus, and everybody is so dramatic. It's like there's the end of the world and all this stuff. And what I kind of really started to attune myself to was this hierarchy of what it is this kind of intersectional hierarchy of like, okay, the most oppressed are the most kind of revered and have the most cultural power in a way. And so it was almost like Muslims had kind of taken the top spot. And so it was weird, like the way that people were kind of adopting this like deferential attitude towards Muslims. Like it was like suddenly like the hijab, I write this in my book, like the hijab was like a sign of resistance. Like it was very strange. And now again, me being a good liberal progressive, like I was taking a class called Contemporary Islamic Civilization because I wanted to learn. Like I was like, they had like they had a Muslim group on the school grounds on the quad laid out these huge blue tarps. And they had all of people who would volunteer to participate in afternoon prayer with the Muslims on the campus to a sign of solidarity. And I did it. So here I am touching my forehead to the ground. And I remember thinking at the time, like, my whole life has been like getting away from religious fundamentalism. And here I am like doing it. It was like, there was such, and I also kind of remember thinking at the time, like, there's no way that a Christian group would ever be like, hey, everybody participate. Like that would be seen as a sign of like supremacy.
Oh, they'd hate that.
There was so much. And I also knew fundamentally with my understanding of religious fundamentalism, how similar, modes or kind of Christianity and fundamentalist religion Christianity can be to Islam. Like it comes from the same stuff, like the story, like, they're called like Luti, like Lot, like Sodomites, like it's all the same story. It's all the same scripture. It's the same verse. And like, it comes from the same place. So I knew the parallels. Like I knew how important the separation of church and state was and secularism is. And I respecting absolutely people's right to believe what they believe, but keeping that separate from legislation and so on. And I knew the parallels between, and I saw the parallels between kind of like Christian kind of nationalistic perspectives and Sharia or Islam. And I kind of was really, and so when it was like the progressive way was to kind of adopt this weird kind of culturally relativistic attitude towards Islam, I was like, that was where I first started to kind of just be like, the way that it was taught, like I'm reading these papers from Columbia professors in my courses, and they're saying like, oh, the burqa it's like a mobile home for women, because it allows them to move about freely in the world, and kind of bring they're tied to domesticity and but allows to kind of move around in the world and bring the their domestic life with them. And it was like this very backward, like this absolute, like, relativistic way of looking at things. I'm like, that's bananas. Like, that's
only a Muslim could say that. If you were to be like, bitch, make me a sandwich, they'd freak out. But if a Muslim says it, it's fine. Which is how illogical all their shit is, that all of these ideologies are completely in conflict with one another.
But
like,
this is the thing, is that I don't even think this professor is Muslim that was writing that. So yes, you can be Muslim, or you can be a professor and a post-colonial academic professor who's an apologetic for Islam and super anti-Western and just pro whatever isn't West. So whether it's, it was like,
and whatever isn't white,
whatever. Yeah. And it was just all about like, and look, there was validity to some of the argument of like, when we, go into Iraq and Bush is saying like, oh, this is about liberating women from the oppressors and all of that stuff. And it's like, okay, there's also obviously this isn't like kind of dressing up these military fronts in this kind of, altruistic, humanistic kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And people really fall for that. And so there's absolutely a lot to criticize, 1,000,000%. But it was like going that far and being like, oh, they're like mobile homes and like people really want. It was just like, it was so backwards, and it was trying to essentially say like women, that this is anything that wasn't Western. It was really to kind of degrade the West and what we understood to be, good about what we were living in, and to kind of feel bad for it and apologize for it, and to prioritize and privilege other ways of knowing. So it was like, yeah, you might think that burqas are wrong, but really that's just because you're an ignorant white person, and really like these women are that kind of thing.
Also, by the way, hey Vaughn, we will be back on Thursday with episode 2 of Pimpcast, so can't wait to see you on there. Hey Steph, thanks for being here. So I think the top of the pecking order of the progressive stack, trans is number 1. Trans is the most sacred cow of all, and Muslim is right up there with them. So yeah, it's amazing how. What's that?
Yeah, and it kind of like depending, but yeah,
fluctuates.
Yeah.
But the two most backwards ideologies of all are at the top of their pyramid.
Yeah, essentially.
But it's amazing how, like we were saying before, that what they want for other people is never what they would want for themselves. So it's sort of like how you see these celebrities at award shows with 10 armed guards and walls everywhere, checking IDs to get in. So self-defense for them, none for you. Or, the leaders of all these groups like GLAAD and the HRC talking about capitalism while they make millions of dollars off of this.
Millions.
Mm-hmm.
Million.
Or these women supporting Islam, they don't want to wear a burqa, but they don't give a fuck about the other women who are forced to.
Right.
It's unbelievable to me. It really is this sort of backwards, upside down land that they live in.
Yeah.
When did you sort of start speaking up about things? So you started.
So that my first semester, I kind of started to be like, just like, wow, these people are crazy. Like, and the way that they were talking about race, and the way that they were, and I remember, you know, and I write about this in the book, the first person that I became really close friends with, who ended up being my closest friend throughout the university, is Black. And he and I became friends. And I remember having this conversation with him, and I write about this in the book, like talking with him, and I'm being like, are people, and he was older. He was an older, non-traditional student like I was. And he was actually studying African-American literature, and he was, I love him. And he said, I said, are people like weird about race? Like, are they? And he was like, they're crazy. And I was like, thank God. It was like such a relief, because I was like, okay. So we actually were able to kind of talk, and he was like, you need to say this out loud. Like, you need to talk. Because
you need to. Is he gonna?
Well, he actually did, but he was saying, like, what he was saying was, he's like, I grew up with white people. He's like, this way that people are talking about whiteness is, he's like, I find it really, you know, counterintuitive, and, you know, it's not helping anything. I find it really negative. And I was like, yes, I was like, there's that. Absolutely. I was like, but it's also, I said, I feel very like morally uneasy about the way that people are expecting or encouraging me to view Black people as, rather than individuals, but as like this oppressed monolith, like almost like to kind of pity and really view Black people differently. Like, I was raised to be, thankfully it really stuck and worked. Like, I was like of the MLK era. Like, I just grew up, I was always around, like, I just, it was like that idea of judging, you know, the kind of their character, not the color of their skin. And here at Columbia, it was like, no, judge everyone by the color of their skin. So it was like, if someone makes a point in class, the first thing you have to think about is like, what color is that person that's speaking? Because if you are, you know, if they're talking about something specific, then if they're Black and you're white, then who are you to disagree or say anything? Because you don't know. It was like so insane. And I was like, I don't feel morally, I feel like this is wrong to me. Like, I actually feel like I am very passionate about fighting racism. Racism is real. Racism is a thing. And like, but I felt like we were getting somewhere, and this seems like this is only going to cause, first of all, so much like white, what we see now, like white resentment, white ethnocentrism. I mean, it's so predictable. It's like, of course there's going to be this. And that's what I was like, this is really, really bad. Like, but yeah, I mean, so it was really, and then the first summer that I was at Columbia, it was my GLAAD internship. And that was when I was really like, because here at GLAAD, not only was it the approach to activism that they were taking, but it was the young people that I was working with, all of these other interns. That was like because here they are like, there's this person who is this woman, and she's like, that was when I learned, this was 2017, summer 2017. I did not know non-binary. This is when I was first introduced to it, you know, and it's kind of weird to think like, well, that was only 9 years ago. Like, but I really didn't. This was my first. So it was like, oh, my pronouns are they, them, and I'm trans, non-binary. But I was like, okay, but you're just like a girl. Like, you have short hair and like, you don't shave your legs, but you're still like, you have a boyfriend, like you're a straight girl, you know, like super, very privileged, like went to like a really expensive school upstate. And I believe actually grew up on the Upper East Side. But anyway, she was like on Grindr. And she's like, oh, cis gays are so racist,
they've invaded,
transphobic, and da-da-da. And I was like, this is so foreign. Like, I didn't understand. I was like,
I've never understood why transgender people allow that shit and don't speak up about that. Because it's like, you're not I mean, unless they're like, you know, more conservative trans person. But these people, like, you know, some girl, that's how I found out about it. So back in the day when my views sort of just first started changing, when these things sort of all started coming to light at the beginning, that's how I found out what non-binary is. This girl who I knew her since we were kids and stuff. Straight girl, got a short haircut, and decided now she's a they them. She's non-binary, straight chick because and again it goes back to what we were saying before, that girls can be tomboys, girls can have short haircuts. That doesn't mean you're not a real girl. But the thing is, at this time, I had this group of people that I was friends with who were all these glad types, these just the worst people you can imagine. And I didn't know at the time because I had never heard of this shit, and nobody had heard of this shit because it's not real. But I didn't know that these things were unspeakable. So I think I'm just telling this funny anecdote about, can you believe this shit? This girl, we've known each other since we were kids. She cut her hair short, this straight girl, and now she claims she's not a girl. She's a they, them. What the fuck? How can a person be a they? And I could just feel the energy in the room was like I pulled my pants down and took a dump on the floor. And the next day, all those people like unfollowed me from everything. And that's how I became a Nazi overnight.
Yeah.
These people are insane.
1,000,000%. Yeah. And it was like, and that was what I just couldn't understand how, like, someone was like, oh yeah, they're like, my pronouns are, and I like, again, this was early. So I was like kind of really obsessed with trying to abide by it, because I wanted to be like a good, like seen as a good person. And so I was like, okay, but it was really hard because I was like, this is grammatically incorrect. Like it was just, but also, and so they're like, I'm non-binary. And I'm like, okay. But I was like, I thought we were supposed to like expand what was possible for men and women. Like I thought that was what like gay liberation was all about. And I'm like, I did not understand how they could not see how regressive it was to say, oh, because I am not he-man, I'm not a man, I'm either a woman or I'm non-binary, but I'm something other than a man. Or because I'm not Barbie, I'm not a woman. And it's like, okay, non-binary, like I get what you're doing. Like, sure, if you kind of adopt this, maybe it's somehow kind of like it gives you permission to kind of, dress however you want or whatever, but like you can just do that. You don't need to adopt this. And also it's very selfish. It's a very selfish and self-centered, because what you're doing is, okay, you're saying like, oh, I'm non-binary, so now I can do all these things. But what you're doing is making the category of woman and man so much smaller. You're shrinking it to say like, oh, because you are this, this, and this, well, what you're really saying is that like a woman is someone who has long hair and is in the kitchen or whatever, is like, and yeah, sex differences are real, and there is a kind of typical way that females end up evolving to be, males end up evolving to be, and then there's also a lot of atypicality in that. And like that's what I wanted to like, we can make space for that and create more opportunity, and men can do this and women can do this and da 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 da. And we've just completely lost the grip on the reality of sex differences. So at first it was like, okay, non-binary, okay, whatever, it's regressive, I don't know, but then it was like, okay, then it was like confusing this gender with sex. Like I was like, oh, you're saying that you're not actually a male now, or you're not actually a female now because you're something other than a male or like, okay, that's bananas. And then when they were like medicalizing, this is the darkest thing, one of the darkest things, because there's been a lot of it, the lightning fast speed that we've gone from, oh, this little kid is non-binary, they, them, or like, to medicalizing non-binary identities in kids. That is like next level to me. It's like, first of all, I can't, medicalizing it in adults, and then also being like, oh, now gender affirming care for trans and non-binary kids. And
have you seen when they keep the nipples?
Yeah. It's just,
what happened? I always wondered, what happened to the Hippocratic Oath? What happened to do no harm?
Yeah.
See, keeping someone's nipples seems a little harmy to me.
Yeah.
Or then really they have the people who get surgeries where they have like nothing down there. It's like a stump.
Yeah, well, like the nullification surgeries.
Yes.
Yeah.
Speaking
That's
of
the thing.
things
I mean,
that
I
I've
wrote about
learned
it.
that I never
Yeah.
wanted to know.
Yeah. I mean, it really is. It's like there are surgeons who, I've actually wrote about this recently for my Substack, but like Blair Peters, who calls himself the queer surgeon on Instagram, is a surgeon in Oregon. He's a plastic surgeon, and he talks about like he's essentially like queering the operating room, like queering. So what he does is like when patients come in, he's pretty much like, where is your dysphoria? Like, what do you envision for yourself? What do you want? So he constructs all of this bespoke genitalia and different things. So like they may want to keep their penis, but get rid of their balls and like have a, vaginal canal or vulvoplasty, all these different things. It's bananas. And it's one thing, like I just, it's sad. It's really, really sad.
Oh my God, I looked this person up. Another thing I wish I never knew.
Yeah, you're not going to want to. I mean,
shit.
It took me a long, there was like an interview that I listened to and watched with him a few years ago. And it took me like 2.5 years to write about it, because I was like, this is just so dark. And it's a really long piece, but I pretty much just like wrote like what he was saying in it. And it's so nuts, just what he says out loud, and what he admits to, how he talks about how he's like, we're running into an issue now with like young, more puberty suppressed kids not having enough genital tissue because it stunted the growth of their genitals. So we don't have, scrotal tissue to construct a neovaginal canal. So we have to take their stomach lining and we have to do robotic surgeries and da 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 da. And he talked. It's so strange to listen to someone just say these things out loud, these kind of really ways that young people are being harmed. I mean, adults, go ahead, if you want to. This technology is there, people are going to continue doing this. It's there, and that's just like it is what it is. But with young people, it's inexcusable, and there's no excuse for it. And I don't. The medical system and these organizations, GLAAD, wherever it is, they've completely failed us, and they've completely failed young people. And so have our political leaders. They've failed us. And
that's why I think it's really important to speak out about this, because we've seen over the last decade how all of these institutions have been captured, how they will just go along with this shit. Like, you think, how do people like this still have a medical license? Because they are all captured by ideology. And I think it's maybe just a tiny bit starting to turn a corner. I don't think it's as much as people think, but I think we're at maybe, hopefully, the beginning of it turning a corner, where now a lot of these places are either stopping doing it or they're pretending like they never had any part of it. Like, these people should all fucking be held accountable.
Yeah. We'll see.
Yeah, this is very true, Drew. The lawsuits will change things, not overnight, but they will, hopefully.
Yeah, and I think they are already, because with this lawsuit recently, this $2 million lawsuit, and I think it was Connecticut, this detransitioner one, and that doctors look at that and they're like, oh, we don't. So all of these NYU Langone and all these, they've discontinued this, and they're still, as far as I know, not doing it, even though a judge put a stay on Trump's ruling that they are not allowed to do this anymore. But I don't even think they've started it back up, because they're like, this is the medicine, I mean, this study that just came out, what was it, like a week ago, whether it was Danish study or Finnish study, with this huge high rates of psychiatric comorbidity post, gender affirming care, is showing, for the record, that kids are getting worse, not better, from these procedures. And looking at all of this data, and the writing has been on the wall. It's been there for years and years and years. And the people continue to double down on this. And I guess, I think that it's like, once you go into something and you go behind this, it's like you kind of got, I guess a lot of people feel like they got to keep going, because to come back and say, okay, I was wrong now, it's like you're really admitting to a lot. You're really admitting to. So I think that people are going to double down and really take it to the grave.
Yeah. Isn't this sick too? Once they start losing more money than they make, suddenly they'll find a conscience. Isn't it sick how it has to affect their bottom line for them to know, don't mutilate children?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like once it affects their income, suddenly they'll realize.
Yeah.
And it really is, it's something that I would compare to entrapment, where entrapment is when somebody is led to commit a crime that they never would have committed otherwise. That's really what's happening with a lot of these kids, that the idea is being put in their heads from every angle. But I've seen it happen with friends of mine who have kids, that some bitch teacher gets involved and tells their daughter, maybe you're really a boy. And then they shower them with attention and bright colors and validation, like, which is just what every kid wants, validation from adults, and it sets them down this horrific path.
100%.
And the thing is too, by the way, it drives me insane. I was just having a discussion the other day with a friend of mine, and he starts talking about gay and trans. I'm like, stop it. Those are two completely separate things. It drives me nuts when people use that interchangeably. They are two completely separate things. And the thing is, there have been gay people and, you know, people who are not straight, whatever, since the beginning of time. Look at somebody like you. You were raised in this constricted environment and you still turned out gay. It's not like there were fucking rainbows being pushed on you.
Yeah.
If things like non-binary or trans kids, if these were real and naturally occurring things, why did they not exist prior to the last decade? How many kids when you were growing up were trans or non-binary?
Right. And, you know, and I mean, there were, you know,
Zero.
that was right. And that was what, you know, in the 80s and 90s, when the Dutch started developing this protocol to treat young people, because there were young people that were going and getting, you know, help psychological, because they were really, really gender nonconforming and they didn't fit in.
Yeah.
And their parents were like, you know, I don't know what to do about this. And, you know, how can we make this right? And that was kind of really what it began as, was these Dutch clinicians were seeing that the adults who transitioned, especially the males, were having a lot of difficulty passing as women, and they were having difficulty having relationships and functioning socially and succeeding in society. And they were still really unhappy. And so they were like, well, if we just arrest their puberty and they never masculinize to begin with, then we can kind of, and then feed them estrogen, then they'll pass as women, and then they'll be happy. So, but then the trick is like picking out which kids are going to want to do that when they're older. And it's insane. It's madness. It's just completely nuts. And that was really what the motivation was. So it's not like there haven't been gender nonconforming. I mean, other cultures, whether we're thinking about the Fa'afafine and Samoa culture, like there are what they kind of think of as like third sex or third genders, even though everybody understands they're male. Like there's no denying, they're like, we know they're male. But because there's it's a very kind of patriarchal culture and very kind of rigid gender roles, it's like, if there's this very gender nonconforming boy, then he's kind of raised as a Fa'afafine. So he's kind of very more domestic. He behaves more like a woman. He even has relationships with men. And that's kind of, if we're talking about like, what's always been around through history is gender nonconformity. Always has been.
Well, no, of course, but I mean in terms of calling themselves non-binary or they, them or something.
Exactly.
Never existed.
Exactly. And, you know, yes, there's evidence of exclusively same-sex attracted people throughout history for millennia. Yes.
Yeah, but somehow we got 2,000 plus years without kids becoming trans or they, thems.
And now suddenly, if they don't, all of them are going to kill themselves.
All of them.
Going to be a genocide. Yeah. It's the darkest thing. But again, you brainwash, you really kind of get people to believe these things and you bring them into the fold. And once they start like saying these things, it's so hard to go back on, like,
Yeah.
because it's like, this is part of my belief system and this is what makes me a good person. And then once you're either a young person and you've taken these medical steps and you're like, I am this thing, give me this. And then if you start to question it, because this is what a lot of experiences of detransitioners, they don't want to say that they're even questioning it. They don't want to say, because they don't want to go back to their family that they demanded this from, then to be like, I was wrong, you were right, or I am not really this thing. And they're losing the community that they found. And then if you think about the parents that have done this to their kids, because, either a lot of them are bananas, but also a lot of them have just been misled. They've been misled by these doctors who've told them, your kid is going to kill yourselves if you don't do this for them. And it scares the bejesus out of them. And so once they do this, then yes, they have to keep doubling down, because imagine trying to admit to yourself like that you kind of facilitated this kind of harm for your kid. And so it's like you head down this road, and to be able to get back out of it is so difficult.
Especially if you've lost body parts at that point,
yeah,
or you've been put on these drugs since you were 10, 11, 12 years old.
Exactly.
Like, how are you going to go back from that? I mean, talk about a risk of people killing themselves. I can't imagine if you were put on hormones and puberty blockers and told you were the opposite sex from the time you were a child,
right,
given surgery, and then you get a bit older and realize that that's not the case. What are you going to do? There's no going back.
Right.
Like, I can't imagine.
You just look at Jazz Jennings and you see what Jazz Jennings went through and how many botched surgeries Jazz has had. And, Jazz, of course, says like, my parents did the right thing for me. They love me. And I mean, for Jazz to kind of question that and to say, perhaps, I'm essentially a eunuch now, and I can't have this, maybe I could have grown up to be just like a effeminate man. And it would mean that his mother, imagine like thinking, because I know, like, I love my mom so much. Like, it would be so hard for me to be like, my mom harmed me. Like this, the choices that my parents made for me, like this actually was harm. Like that would be so hard to reckon with. And I don't know if I ever would be able to. And I mean, I hope Jazz finds happiness and does. And I hope that there's, reconciliation there. But to see the difficulties that individual has encountered, and we've all seen that on our television screens from the beginning, and with
that's this is such a good point. What's crazy is Jazz's botched surgeries were televised,
right,
and put on magazine covers and held up like some wonderful thing.
Yeah, and it's and that was where a lot of people got a lot of young people who started to kind of rethink their identities as trans, is where they got it from. They were introduced to these shows. I talked to a lot of detransitioners, like males who would watch Gigi Gorgeous was another one on YouTube. Gigi Gorgeous was like a trans kind of influencer, and these videos of Gigi Gorgeous, that was another one where people were like, oh, because for really femme young boys, it's like, oh, I can be really pretty and really femme, and it gives me permission to kind of behave in this way that I really want to, and I'll just be a girl. Like I'll just be able to do these things, so I don't know. It's just really manipulating and taking advantage of people's vulnerabilities, especially young people. I just think it's really, really sad.
You know what's interesting, by the way? A while back, I went through GLAAD's own literature on suicide prevention, and what they're doing to everyone goes against their own teachings.
I wrote about that. I wrote a Substack article about that.
Yeah, they specifically say you should never say that someone's going to kill themselves if you don't give them what they want. What are they doing to everyone? And the thing is, it's these specific lies that are being pushed by them, like, oh, puberty blockers are just completely reversible. All this is totally reversible. You could just stop. When we know that now that's very much not the case.
No, that's exactly right. I mean, it was like when I found it's back from like 2017. It's called the Movement Advancement Project. And they put together this literature for how to report on suicide and the LGBT population. And GLAAD and GLISTEN and HRC are all co-authors or sponsors of, or co-sponsors of this literature. And you look at it, it says, I mean, it says things like, you never say that any kind of like law or policy is going to make people kill themselves. Meaning, like, if this law passes, that means that people are going to be, it's all about teaching resilience. And no matter what happens, you can be strong enough. And going through that and seeing how they fundamentally break their own rules over and over and over again, I firmly believe, and I would venture a guess, that they are contributing more to the culture of high, more, psychiatric, morbidity and even suicidality among young people than anything else that's going on. Anything that's coming out of the Trump administration, I believe that they are contributing into it, and the way that they break their own rules massively.
I really think and I hope that day is soon, but this will be looked back on the way that we look back on lobotomies and eugenics and all the past medical abuses of history.
Yeah.
But
oh my gosh, it's late, Mike. We've been going for. Are there still people here? I don't know.
Yeah, there's people here.
Oh, okay, good. Okay,
sorry,
great.
yeah, we both know how to yap. We can wrap up in a minute. I don't want to keep you forever. I wanted to bring up though. By the way, yeah, we'll probably wrap up in a little bit. So if anyone feels so inclined, send in your super chats and also join my locals or Patreon or become a channel member. We have movie night this weekend. I'm very excited. I wanted to bring up this though. The advocates. Oh, these bitches want me to sign up to their mailing list? Fuck you.
Yeah.
Their lovely new hit piece on you. I just love, just from the beginning of it, I love this. A recent Wall Street Journal op-ed divorcing gay from queer people reinforces a hierarchy of belonging that privileges proximity to straightness. Like, each thing that they list here is so nuts for so many different reasons. Did you imagine being told when you were growing up and struggled with all these things that you just have a proximity to straightness?
It is really nuts. Like, I read it. Okay. Cause I read it, I was like, okay, maybe this will be, and it, like I said, it was a lot of words to say, not a lot. And it was pretty much saying like, this is how you are supposed to view these things. I wasn't saying anything like, oh, yeah, I was just like, I do not subscribe to this approach to, like, I wasn't saying nobody else can call themselves queer. I wasn't saying that. I was like, I am not, when I say, like, when gay rights became LGBTQ plus rights, suddenly, I'm force teamed with all of these peoples whose values do not align with mine. I do not believe that kids are born in the wrong body and that you should medicalize gender nonconformity. I think that's regressive. Does that mean that I'm against gender nonconformity? No, not at all. I want to create more space for those minority individuals who are growing up and they might be bullied. Like, let's figure this out. To teach other kids, like, yeah, they're different. There's going to be different kids. They're going to be whatever. And that's okay. Doesn't mean they're better. It doesn't mean they're worse. It just means that they're different. They're atypical, and that's fine. There is such thing as a norm, and there is such thing as a norm, and that's okay. It's like, it's statistics, it's math, it's science. It's like what makes us different and human, and that's fine. And these myths that we feed these kids, and that's all I'm saying, is that, like, the values that I'm talking about isn't like, stop putting these words in my mouth that it's like, oh, everybody has to be straight acting, or everybody has to be like perfectly monogamous and go to church and wear khakis and blah blah blah. I'm like, no. What I'm saying is, like, the values that I'm talking about is, like, I don't think that we should chemically castrate little boys because they're girly little boys. I don't think that women should have to play sports against males. I think that's very, very wrong. I believe that I understand sex to be immutable and binary. There's nothing evil or sinful or wrong about that. I do not believe what you believe. And so by saying this, and people are like, oh, he's a pick-me gay. Like, oh, there's all this stuff, like it's constantly like, oh, they're gonna come for you, they're gonna put you in the camps just like they're putting us in the camps. And why are you trying to suck up?
I've been waiting for it.
Well,
I'm gonna meet my future ex-husband in those camps.
Right. And so
Like,
exactly. But here's the thing. It's like, I'm not saying this to like make myself palatable for any kind of right winger or conservative. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying this for me. I'm saying like I dissent. I'm saying I dissent, and that I know a lot of other people do too, and that's okay. We are not a monolith. Look, when Caitlyn Jenner came out as trans, Bruce Jenner came out as trans years ago, right? And I was still like very woke at the time and like didn't really understand trans. I was just like fully on board because I was like, sure, let this person be who they want to be, and that's part of whatever, right? And so this whole thing comes out, and then suddenly Caitlyn Jenner's politics start coming out, very conservative, right wing, and now everybody was like, holy shit. And I was like, to me, I was like, this is a good thing. Like, this just shows that trans people are many and varied. Like, there's viewpoint diversity. We're not all the same. There can be conservative gays, there's liberal gays, there's progressive gays, there's socialist gays, there's this. Like, it's just a part. But what LGBTQ and queerness and all of this does, it demands political. It says like, we're all fighting the same thing. And that is not, no, that makes this so small. That makes things so, you are actually constructing a prison for yourself. And I am not going to imprison myself within that. I refuse. I'm not going to do that. And that's all I'm saying. And so believe what you want. I fully respect that you are progressive or queer or anti-Western or anti-capitalist or whatever. Like, you are allowed to believe those things. But no, it is not for the pick me, hey, for conservatives and the right wing, like, don't lump me in with them. I mean, yeah, I don't want anybody, but it's really for the average gay person to be like, yeah, I don't think this. Even Mike, even trans people are saying, like, on my Substack, they're being like, I'm trans, I'm with you. I don't like, there's actually a trans subreddit, there's a subreddit that I was like looking at, and someone was like, oh, this is and all the trans people that are commenting were like, I'm not queer. I'm with that. I agree with the And I'm like, how funny is this? Like, this kind of demanding rigidity and conformity to this. And people, I just want to be able to people to know that they have permission to say out loud, no, I don't agree with that, and I dissent. And no, that does not make me a bad person. That just makes, when I say values, I'm not saying, oh, Christian monogamy, right wing, blah, blah, blah. I'm saying, like, you're crazy. You think that sex isn't real. You think that we should be castrating these little kids. And yes, it is chemical castration. That's fundamentally what it is. You can be like, oh, this language that you're using. Tough. Those are chemically castrating drugs. You are chemically castrating girly little boys. You are denying them a sexual future and a future to grow up with their healthy endocrine system, their body intact. Normally, you are denying them the right to grow up and to make decisions for themselves and to mature naturally. And this is fundamentally a human rights abuse, and I am not signing up for it. So I am signaling to the broad American public and everyone, no, not in my name, like, I am not a part of that. And so opting out, LGBTQ+, no, LGBT, I'll even opt out of gay if you want me to. Like, I don't even care.
Please.
I like dick, I like men, I'm married to a man, I've been married to a man for 11 years, whatever. Like, that's it. I don't care. Like, I do not even care about any of it. I just am a free thinker. There's a lot of us out there. We're probably the majority. Stop telling us how to think and what to think. That's all I'm saying. So you can write a million words about privileges, proximity to straightness, and rewarding, marginalizing anyone who doesn't. No, that's not what this is at all. And you can keep telling yourself that. What you're discouraged about, what you're upset about this writer, is that I disagree with him, and that is unacceptable. That is unacceptable to these individuals, is that I disagree, and I'm saying it out loud. They hate it. They hate it.
Well, and what they employ is constantly the language and the tactics of abusers. There's one called Darvo that they always reverse things and call you, the words always mean the opposite of what they claim to, like where they say here, conformity, rewards conformity. These are the most conformist bitches on earth. Their entire ideology is built on control and conformity. That could be their mission statement. They like, why is it, for example, that every one of these people you see with the septum piercing all has the exact same views to the line? Every person, they might dress differently than what you think of khakis and stuff like you said, but they all dress the same. They all have the same thoughts. They all have the same interests. It is built upon conformity. And when somebody actually expresses non-conformity, this is what happens.
Exactly.
Like, I guarantee you this author, we probably know exactly what this person looks like without having to look at them.
Maybe. I mean, I don't even know. I really, you know, who knows? Who knows? I really don't know.
No way is he cute. There's no chance in hell he's cute.
Hey, there's a lot of cute ones that are full believers, are true believers of all this stuff.
It's so disappointing.
Yeah, they're out there, and they're, you know, they're it doesn't discriminate, like on both. They're really, it can pull kind of anyone in, and a lot of people in. And, you know, people ask me, they're like, how are so many gay people on board? Like, you know, people ask me, like, why is that? And it's true that there are, like, there's even a lot of like gay gender clinicians and so on. And how can gay people still get glad? Like, you know, people don't believe this. And I'm like, you know, a lot of gay people, I don't know. I just think, you know, finding a community and the thought of losing that community. And that was a hard part for me, because I really did feel for a long time like I had lost something when I started publicly dissenting and being pushed out and excommunicated and exiled and seen it. Like, even this last week, like, it's been rough because I didn't expect the op-ed. Like, I wrote a piece for the Atlantic recently, and I've written for the Wall Street Journal in the past. And like, my book's been out, but like, I didn't actually realize that this was going to garner so much attention, this specific op-ed. And so seeing the reaction and seeing all of this, feeling this such hate, like people rejoice, like on like, yay, we're bullying him. And like, you know, he's like, and making up stuff and doing this. Like, they're saying that I write my own reviews, my own book reviews. Like,
you don't need to.
Well, no, I don't need to, but I'm like,
you have to.
I'm like, that would be a lot of work. Like, you can go, like, the reviews that, like, if I tweet something like, hey, new review, like on, like, you can go to Amazon and see it, or you can go to Goodreads and see it. So like, that would be a lot of work for me to like create all of these accounts. And then also, like, as far as I understand it, Amazon, you have to be a certified buyer of the book to be able to review it. Like, so you have to be proof, like, I bought this book, so that not every, because Goodreads, anybody can just go on and there's like, can be 1-star reviews, because they'll be like, oh, he's a transphobe, da 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 da. They can do whatever. But on Amazon, you have to show that. So that would mean that I would have to create all of these accounts and buy the book under these different accounts. So I would have to like spend a lot of money and then write all of these. It would just be a lot. And so, but then they say it with such command. Oh, I found out that he writes all of his, and then there's like 750 likes. And so I'm like, wow, lovely. Okay. And they're saying that I stage my book in bookstores. So like they're saying, because I've like taken pictures, and I'll be like, oh, like I was in Barnes and Noble in Union Square, and I was like walking up, and it's very exciting to me to see my book in Barnes and Noble. I've been going to Barnes and Noble since I was a kid. It's like my favorite place to go. Like,
especially
I love
that one. That's a great one.
Yeah, it's a great one. And I loved, and so to be going up the escalator and look over and to see like, oh, there's my book, like on the shelf, like right there. It's very thrilling. So like, I'll take a picture with it, and they're saying that I bring my book into the bookstore. But I'm like, you can look and you can see that the book is available. Like, you can check availability in store. Like,
don't let these people gaslight you into anything. They'll try to make you think you're crazy. They, you know, I always go back to, there was this kid who was 21, just some college kid. His name was Wilson Gavin, who his big thought crime was, he said, drag queens are not for kids. And it got picked up by all the LGBT outlets and stuff. they bullied this kid so relentlessly that he jumped in front of the train tracks. And the important point is that was not enough for him. They all celebrate there. You could see by the thousands all their comments afterwards celebrating it.
Wait, who was this? Who was that?
I'll send you the thing I wrote about it. His name was Wilson Gavin. But yeah, so he said drag queens are not for kids. So when they say, oh, it's suicide prevention and all this shit, but you can outright show them specific examples where how they treat anyone who disagrees with them leads to the exact same thing. They don't give two shits.
Not to be like super like whatever, because it's like, you know, a little cringy even to say this out loud, but I did say to a close friend, I was like, I'm having like a trauma response to all this, because all of this, seeing like 1,300 comments and them being like, find his grinder, find out who we all this stuff, and all these people saying, and I know that he writes his own reviews and he's the fakest person, It's like it takes me right back to middle school when I remember being in the media center and this girl Chantal being like, everybody's talking about you and everybody's saying that you're gay. And then her showing me a library book, and in the library book in the media center, someone had written Ben is a fag. And I was like, I remember just feeling it was like so full body, just completely fear stricken. Like everybody in this huge school is talking about me and saying these things and I had just learned that this is the worst thing that you can be in the community. Like, and now they're saying it. It was like, and it's like right back there. Like I feel this, it's bodily. It's like this whole body dread. It's like fear. It's very, and so, you know, it just takes a lot of work to like kind of breathe and to like, you know, just sit through it. And I can completely understand why someone would go to such a dark place and feel like there's no way out of it, because it really, your brain really does catastrophize, and it really does think of the worst outcome. Like, oh my God, what else are they going to say? And what else are they going to make up about me? Or what else are they going to say? And who's going to believe this? And who's going to do that? And like, what are they going to come for me? Like, are they going to find me? Or like there's just all of these things that you can think, and it's very, 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 very dark. And I'm sad. I'm really, really sad that people have to go through that anybody has to go through that.
Don't let these bitches bother you, though. They are scum. They are the worst people. The only thing these people understand is strength and knowing that they will never get you to back down. So I'm always here for you. I got your back. I've been through this shit a million times. Fuck these people.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it.
Also, Drew, thank you so much, my friend, for the YouTube minimum. You are the best. Also, hey, Duke, I hope you had a good nap. Exactly this. They're all living out their pathetic ninth grade revenge. Well, Ben, this has been amazing. You got to come back on sometime. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I loved it.
Yeah, this was great. Everyone, go buy his book because it's amazing. The link is below. Follow him on this stuff. Join his Substack. Join my stuff too, because why not? I'll be back on Thursday with the new episode of Pimpcast. I'm very excited. Is there anywhere else people can find you?
Yeah, so just at Ben Appel on X. And then, yeah, I mean, my Instagram is private right now, but yeah, my book, Cis White Gay, The Making of a Gender Heretic, Amazon, it's on Kindle, it's at Barnes & Noble, Book Culture, Books A Million, these things. But yeah, people really like it. And it's I don't know, the responses that I've got from people has been awesome. And so I really do hope more people read it, because I really feel like it will help people understand a lot more and just give people feel like they have permission to kind of say things and just to not feel alone. And so, yeah, read my book.
Do it. Dude, you're the best. Looking forward to it again. Reach out anytime. I got your back. Fuck these people.
Thank you, Mike.
All right. I will see you guys Thursday. Thanks for hanging out. Bye,
everyone.